when people actually turn towards what it is they're afraid to turn towards, there's so much there that can actually shift everything. Because their emotions are there for us to make a change, to show us what is out of alignment or in alignment. And from that, we can actually literally use our emotions to help guide us.
Welcome back to Perspective Switch. Today's guest is Skylar Sustin. She is local to San Diego and she started her healing journey in 2020. She's currently an emotion and trauma release coach. She's very passionate about talking about fear and limiting beliefs to help other people become more free. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. So happy to be here. First in-person podcast, conversation, interview, and I'm excited for it.
I am too. I also am so excited that I'm officially an affiliate with Maya Moon Cacao, and I'm so grateful for this product because I love cacao, and I love when I get to start my mornings off with such a sweet drink that allows me to become more present and open my heart a little bit more. I also really like Maya Moon because the owner is Catherine Rogers and she's local to San Diego and she's absolutely amazing and so inspiring. She sources this cacao from Ecuador and she's also just started sourcing from Mexico from sustainable farms. And I made some today to share with Skylar.
It's good.
Wait, also, look at it. It's like this golden,
Oh, wow.
color, and smell it.
It does smell good.
Yeah.
I think when it's made, it smells even better, though.
I love that.
Like warming to the heart.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned that your healing journey started in 2020. I'm curious, what has the last 3 years of your life been like?
A bunch of different things. In the last 3 years, I feel like has felt like such a different bunch than like the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. One, I think it's been more present, definitely, because since healing, I think there's been so much change, not just with COVID, but with like my life in terms of like relationships or family and like re-navigating a lot of shifts that were at the foundation of why I started my healing journey. And so these last 3 years, I think have been full of a lot of emotion for sure, and having to navigate and almost reconnect with myself in a way where I was actually paying attention to things and learning how to work through like what's these past 3 years have been since starting. And it's definitely been a roller coaster. I feel it's definitely a good way to say it.
Yeah.
Especially at the start of a healing journey, there's so many different things that come up.
How have some of your relationships shifted as you've healed?
Well, one of the major things that was a catalyst for it was for my healing was during COVID. I had to move back home with my family, and during that time, my parents actually separated, and my dad moved out. And so the relationships of like my family shifted a lot, and it took me a while to have to recognize like what in my relationships with my mom or my sister or my dad were different, and are they actually different at the same time? Realizing like, is this about me? Is it not about me? And having to almost recognize, I think that my relationships with my family have gotten stronger for the most part, just because I've had to bring more awareness to a lot of the things that were unhealthy about my relationships with them, and relearn for myself, like, because I was big with like people pleasing and like perfectionism, and there was a lot of codependency links with me and my mom on her side. And so having to like heal a lot of those things have shifted the way that I approach my relationships, but also just my perspective on like other people that I am with.
You mentioned perfectionism, and people pleasing. I feel like I have that too, especially the people-pleasing one. I think for my perfectionism, I'm highly critical of myself, but I still will do the thing and like put it out there. But I'm definitely really critical. But I'm starting to notice the people-pleasing thing and how it's affecting me. And like, I like need to stand up for myself more often and like maybe say no or maybe ask for help in these ways.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how people-pleasing affects you in so many different areas.
Yeah, it's like it definitely is like all around your life.
Yeah. What are some big things you've learned with people-pleasing? How have you been able to get past it or stop feeling so much like you need to please other people?
I think the biggest thing for me, well, like I said, like there was a lot of codependence with me and my mom. So I think a lot of the people pleasing came from that, as well as for me, like needing to achieve or needing to like look a certain way in terms of achievement to like feel praise or validation. And what shifted it was during the time when my family went through, you know, all of their stuff, and a lot of those old triggers for all of us were coming up. And my first response was to be the one who steps in, be the caretaker for my mom, my sister, try to make sure that I was filling the shoes of whatever, you know, the absence of my dad just actually in the house was. And it got to the point to where I was ignoring everything that I was feeling, and it was boiling up. And not only was it boiling up, but then it was being almost like taken on by my boyfriend then, because he was having to take the burden of what I was saying because I was being there for everyone else daily. And I recognized how much I was ignoring and that it was actually making things worse and not better. Not just for me, but for everyone. Because what I was suppressing was then maybe being taken out on like my family. And so that was, I think, the biggest shift for me and like what made me recognize that I needed to switch the approach that I had to how I can help people, because that's, I think, what it is at the end of the day, but also like recognizing what I was feeling in my part instead of trying to run from it.
What do you think the best way for you to help other people is now?
First, to help myself.
Yeah.
I think that, like, especially in the work that I do today, it's all about being there for other people and like their emotions and traumas. I don't think I would have been able to do any of that if I hadn't done my own work. Like I always think about how if like I for a really long time wanted to be in like some kind of helping mental health type area, but I was so afraid to go into it because I was afraid I would take everything on from other people, or I would just give advice and not take it, like take my own advice. And I got to a place where I finally felt like that wasn't going to happen because I had done so much work to actually recognize what's mine, what's not mine, what am I trying to please with other people, or like what am I taking on, and then separating that in a way where I actually felt I was able to help people fully and authentically without it being something that's like because I need the help myself kind of thing.
This idea of giving the advice and then being scared that you're not going to take it. Like there's some things that I don't want to say just in case maybe one day I do something different. And that does definitely stop us in so many ways. But sometimes I feel like there are things that come to us that aren't like our things. Like there's like wisdom and insight that is delivered to us that we can share. And then there's like also this human side of ourselves that might go and do and mess it up. But like that wisdom is still wisdom.
Yeah.
You know, and it still deserves to be shared.
Yeah. I totally understand what you're saying, especially because I feel like I share like a lot of those like intuitive messages or things like when I'm working with people. And sometimes it does line up to where the thing that you're guided to share with others is also the thing that maybe you need to hear. Or that like some of these struggles and maybe awarenesses that other people share when working with them are the things that also can help you. And so like I never feel like it's like I or in any of this kind of work, like one knows better than the other. Like it's more of a space to guide someone based off of the tools that you have gained. Because I think that you can also receive so much from the people that you work with or that you help, because it also shows you, you know, what you're able to do and provide, but everyone holds their own different kinds of wisdom and insight too.
Yeah, exactly. I have a question that I'm so excited to ask because I'm so curious. Have you noticed a common theme with people? Common traumas, common fears?
One of the biggest things is, I think, worthiness and self-trust. Those are the biggest things that I feel like I have seen people struggle with, including myself, that usually comes from other people's beliefs or things that other people say. A lot of the times it's about that people come and realize how these intrusive thoughts or beliefs or stories that they have are not theirs. And I think that's a big one, especially with that self-worth and that trust. In terms of traumas, I don't think there's like the biggest common one. If anything, I feel like I've learned how different everyone's lives are. Like everyone's lives are so different in their experiences, but there are usually common threads with them. So maybe like people have different experiences or traumas or ways that they experience these traumas, but say that like the thread is always like some type of root in like self-trust or self-worth, which is the biggest pattern. So a lot of time it's these different experiences that end up kind of going to the same thread, because we all have the same underlying values or needs. And when those aren't met, and when we have things that disrupt it, like in our traumas, that's where a lot of those emotions come up. I think also a common one that probably everyone that I've worked with has had is abandonment in some form. Sometimes emotional abandonment, not just physical abandonment, but it comes in so many different forms, like whether it's parents or a relationship, or even like with siblings, or feeling, you know, from a group of people like friends. I think that's definitely one that I've seen everyone have. And I've definitely had ones that I've released that are like abandonment also.
I feel like for me, logically, I know that I'm worthy. Like, I know I'm worthy, but sometimes I just don't fully believe it. How do you even get around that? How do you get to the root of it to really see, like, why do I not believe I'm worthy? Why can't I just say it once and then it's done?
Yeah, all right, if only that was the case.
Yeah.
In my experience, it's because if we don't feel worthy, because we can know it, right, like you said, but sometimes we have conditioning or like energetic attachments to feeling of not being worthy that are still stuck within us from maybe past experiences like traumas or past emotions. And maybe we have more experience or evidence that we are worthy today and we see it, but because we have these attachments to the things that we have experienced as beliefs of non-worthiness in the past, there's a piece of our subconscious that might be still holding on to that. And so while we might consciously know that like overall we are worthy, there's this piece of the ego that's still holding on to these trapped emotions of unworthiness that we can't fully move to feel worthy until we release them. Because when we have these trapped emotions, and if it's like an unworthiness trapped emotion, that is stuck in our body to a point where we are now resonating at that energy level of that unworthiness. And so without us even knowing it, we will continue to attract things of unworthiness or thoughts of unworthiness or these stories that kind of creep up about it because it's still there. And so while we might think it, there's still that deeper root of feeling that at the bottom of like our hearts or the bottom of our souls, because it's a pain that we have experienced that we haven't let ourselves fully feel, which is why it's trapped and why that energy is still present.
Yeah. Why did you become a coach?
I always grew up as the person who was like the advice giver. I was told by a counselor in 7th grade that I should be a counselor. But none of that ever mattered to me. Like, I never really took any of that into account. I grew up around it a lot. My mom is a medium, and she works with grief a lot. And so she was always in, not a coach, but in that kind of, field of supporting and healing. I had no idea what I wanted to do for a while. And like, especially during college, I was like, none of these things, like classic therapy, like, I don't want to go to school that long just to like have to play by a certain set of rules and all of this stuff. And my boyfriend had said I should be I think about life coaching for a while, and I ignored it. I was like, I don't know what a life coach is. That sounds stupid. And then I watched Tony Robbins' documentary, I'm Not Your Guru, on Netflix. During the time where I needed it most. Not only did it speak to me, but in the moment that I watched it, everything shifted that I was like deeply emotionally going through. Because for the first time, I felt an emotion that I didn't feel before, which was purpose. Because I saw what he was doing, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to be able to help people so powerfully that my words can be put simply enough for people to understand and make a shift right then and there. And so I was like, how can I do that? What path can I take to be able to do that? What will get me there? And that, like 3 months later, I took a life coach course. And that was kind of the thing that changed the direction of where I was. I mean, not that I had much direction prior to, but that's what made me decide, like, okay, let me explore this coach thing and how I can then put my own spin on it based off of the things I've experienced, what I've learned from my own healing and all of that.
Yeah, that is an amazing story. I love it.
Thank you.
That feeling of purpose it's so profound.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful for that to drive you energetically. Well, another thing that really caught my attention is that your mom's a medium.
Yeah.
How long has she been a medium for?
Professionally, I think about 12 years, but it was there my entire life. She had been doing it for us or for herself since I can remember, but she didn't start doing it for other people as like a business or a job until those last 12 years, because there was the judgment and the fear. And granted, my great-grandmother, so her grandma, was actually a medium for FBI to help find missing children. But I think what I remember from her saying is that she saw how, I think, dark it can be from her grandma because of all of that. And also, her grandma wasn't the best person. And so I think that turned her off of it for a while. And also because her parents kind of shoved it away, even though they knew it was a thing. And so it didn't really come up as anything for her to do until like more recently because of that.
Wow. Does she go to any spiritualist churches or? Okay. Yeah, I went to the Arthur Findlay College in England. That's when I went to London. And it's a spiritualist church. And I took a mediumship course there. And there were like 90 other women there who also practice mediumship. So it's really cool. My next podcast that's going to post Monday is with a psychic medium. And she actually talked about psychic detective work as well, and how it can be really freaking dark. And like you see murder scenes like with children and just gruesome things. I get that. And it's also interesting how you said your grandmother wasn't the best person.
Yeah.
Which like
from what I've heard, like I think it was maybe one when she had passed, but I have heard that she wasn't.
Yeah, and maybe like her heart wasn't open, or maybe she just experienced so many traumatic things that she didn't treat people the best. But like, I love that because it just expands my perception of how like you can still be tapped in to this thing without like having your heart open.
Yeah.
And another thing, when I was in England too, there's a lot of mediums there who smoke cigarettes, and like the food wasn't like GMO and organic, you know, like it was just regular food, like canned food, like whatever, meat. And I love that because in San Diego, there's just been so many paradigms built around like you have to like eat this, and you like can't drink alcohol, and you can't do these certain things. And if you do these certain things, like you're not as spiritual as someone else. And it could just be my own interpretation of everything and like not actual, but it's just, that's what I've felt from this. I kind of like when there's so many different people from so many different walks of life, like doing the things in different ways. So like it opens us up to what's actually possible and true, and stops like limiting us so much.
Yeah.
And gives us that freedom to be human too, you know?
Right, because you have to balance it out. Like when you're in this and you have that and you're working in that space, whether it's, you know, personally you're using what like ever intuitive like skills you have, or you're using it like in work, we're also human at the same time. Like, and I think that's a big thing, is like you can do those things and still like experience like groundedness, like right here. Like I know a big thing, like my mom always says is like, you know, sometimes you gotta like come back down to earth and like watch a few reality TV shows here and there.
Yeah. Have some laughs.
Right.
Just enjoy it. I mean, that is why we came here, right? To like have this experience and to be human.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I love taking baths, and I feel like recently so many of my most profound like thoughts and experiences have been in my bathtub. And that was so unnecessary for me to say for what I'm about to say. But I was having this thought of like zooming out and kind of thinking about each person that we came here, we incarnated. So I believe in past lives and like incarnation. And we incarnated here individually, and we get to create whatever we want here. Like we all have that freedom to create anything. And that thought for me just felt so powerful and so exciting that I'm like, oh, like I can literally do anything. Like I can open my heart and be really loving and be really kind to people. And like I can create this podcast, and I can get a studio, and I can like decorate it however I want. Like I have that freedom, and we all have that freedom. And like within that, I was like, I would love to empower other people and inspire other people to do that too. Like, how cool would that be to have more hairdressers who are super tapped into this power, who are like super creative, and even like nail artists or, oh my gosh, clothing designers. I would love that. I feel like I just wish clothing was just leveled up a little bit more.
Make it happen. You can create it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense, because then you realize that like all the things you want, the blocks that you think are in the way of it are just in your mind. And maybe they are things that are actual blocks, but it doesn't mean that they're not things you can move through, or things that you can then get creative as to how you can make them work for whatever it is that you want to create.
Yeah.
I know that's like a big thing for me, that I think your thought that you had is something I've been trying to like really remember a lot lately, because we can get so caught up in like the amount of money we have to do things, or like if I'm at the right age to do this kind of stuff, or what other people think and all of that, when realistically, if you think about it, like you really, like the things that you want will happen if you are open to it and you ask for it and you take the action towards it without even whatever blocks are in the way. If you're meant to do those things, they will clear. Yeah. And like, this is one of those things that I'm saying that like, I also need to remember. Yeah. Like we were talking about that earlier. Yeah. Like you can know it and feel it, but having yourself really be in that is so important. So I think it's a really important thought that your bathtub brought to you.
I have some powerful bathtub experience. Piggybacking off of what you just said, you mentioned, I don't know if you said the word limitation. You probably did.
I think I said block.
Block.
Same thing.
Yes. You say block, I say limitation. And another really powerful thing that I've thought about a lot recently is we have come here on this earth to be limited. We will always be limited as long as we live here, as long as we're present in this space and reality. I had this affirmation that I was saying for like the longest time of like, I release like everything, like all of my limits, I release them all. But like, that's not actually, I feel like that's not a great intention or affirmation because we're always going to have limitations. It's kind of just like thinking a little bit more about like, how can I expand my limitations just like a little bit more? Like how am I limited financially right now? And then like, can I just expand it to like $1,000 more or like maybe another 1,000? Because I think as we live here, like it's easy to kind of have those like little level ups, right? But it's hard to go from like, I make $10,000 a month to $1 million a month, you know? But like, it might be a little easier to be like $11,000. So another thing too, I have this friend who's an artist and he was making NFTs and he had like 60 cats and each day, like whatever he was feeling, he would artistically express himself and like add accessories or like change the skin color or like just these little details. But there was the limitation that it was a cat and it had this same outline. So like, I feel like limitations are actually really powerful and they actually help us focus more, especially, oh my gosh, I'm ranting. I'm just ranting.
Isn't that the purpose of the podcast?
Yes, it is. Wait, this one. So like, what I have noticed, there was a point in time in my life where I was like, I do not want to work a 9-to-5 job. I'm not doing this. I quit. I had so much free time. I was like dog sitting and working at a bar, or not a bar, a restaurant. But the issue was that I had so much free time, I didn't know what to do with my time. But when I got another 9-to-5 job, I didn't have all that free time. So it's like, these 4 hours before I go to sleep are so important, so essential. So like it helped me focus, like what do I want to focus on? And it gave me that focus and that attention.
Yeah, that actually reminds me, I don't remember when, but I feel like I had read maybe a study somewhere that was saying that people who have more options in a grocery store are more miserable than people who have less. Because when you have so many different options, whether it's brands or like different flavors, like it takes a lot more time to like maybe think or like be like, okay, what's the best choice? What's not the best choice? What are all of these? And then people who have less choices, they're like, okay, like that's that. Like I've heard before that people say that, I don't remember where, it might have been a Jay Shetty podcast. Like someone was on his podcast saying, like when you wake up in the morning, have your outfit planned, like know what you're gonna have to eat, because that way you have less choices to get in the way of maybe other things that you can flow through or be creative through. And they aren't, it's not that it's much of a limitation, but like you said, like it's almost making space for more flow or creativity, because you're not stuck like spending 10 minutes in your closet trying to figure out what to wear or something. So it makes a lot of sense.
I would just love to help shift that paradigm of limitation and let people like see it as actually a gift instead of a curse. And I say that because I would like that to change for me too. Like instead of being like, oh, I wish I had more money, or like I wish I could do this, to just be like, you know what? This is perfect and this is fine and it's helping me in some way.
Yeah. And I think in that almost acknowledgement that whatever is now is enough brings more. Because you're not focused on needing more or having more. You're grateful and content for where you are. It doesn't mean that you don't have desires, but that you have those desires, but you're still able to be happy with where you're at, knowing that you can work towards those things, however that looks.
Yeah. I would love to get back to more about the services that you offer. So if someone were to sign up right now, what would they expect from your services?
So I usually have people sign up for just one session at first, instead of doing like a bunch of sessions or like a specific program, because it's usually just one-on-one coaching now. And so they sign up for one individual session, and what that is emotion and trauma release coaching. So that is muscle testing. So I don't know if you've heard of muscle testing. It's a way to connect with the subconscious and the body wisdom. And that's what I use to connect with trapped emotions, traumas, or mindsets that are.
Is this an example of muscle
testing?
testing?
Yeah, that's an example. So what I use in mine is the sway test, which is where you're standing up. It's basically as if your body was like a human pendulum. And so I use that to get with to connect with the trapped energies. And then I use energy healing to do and visualization to release those. And then I use intuitive channeling, such as like just receiving messages, and then sometimes I'll do the automatic writing, which is connecting with your higher self or past loved ones to get deeper clarity about the release, as well as messages you need to hear to support you through it. And then I add the mindful coaching aspect, which I think is the biggest difference in a lot of things, because in so much release work, it's just like, okay, you release and you're done. But the mindful coaching actually focuses on helping you through, like, what do I do now? Like, how do I go from here now that all of this energy is released? And making sure to help people actually know, like, what is it I want to work towards to bring into my life? What do I want to integrate now that there's all this space for more energy that I can intentionally bring in? And so that's a big part of making sure that people actually are able to bring in what they want and move towards that life and type of person they want to align themselves with, what life is in alignment for them, rather than just having things be released and get to the core and all that kind of stuff. Long story short. But yeah, that's what all sessions are pretty much the basis of, and it's different depending on how consistent you are too.
Awesome. What does automatic writing look like?
It's like cursive.
Oh.
So it's basically like, if you've heard of like free writing or flow writing, sometimes I refer to free writing and journaling, where you just kind of like let your intuition guide you. So automatic writing is where you just pen to paper, and I just kind of write. That's how my mom does a lot of her medium readings.
Yeah.
And then messages will just come through. I don't know. Sometimes it's like the person's higher self. Sometimes it's past loved ones, or like there's guides that give them the clarity they need to be able to more deeply understand why they need to release things and how it's connected to emotional struggles that they're going through today. Because with the muscle testing, it's yes or no answers, and so you can only get so far with that, but the writing allows us to get deeper into what really is the connection to why this is coming up to release and how it's impacting you now.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I love journaling, so it caught my attention.
Yeah. It's helpful.
Yeah. What's been the most fulfilling thing that you've witnessed from a transformational experience with one of your clients?
Probably when they start to see how their behaviors are shifting. Like maybe an old trigger comes up and they're not responding to it in the same way. Like they catch it, they have the awareness of that it comes up, and they're able to shift themselves out of it. Or I think also, besides just big transformations, I think when people make the clicks or those light bulb clarities come in that almost they've been waiting for to like make everything make sense as to why they are the way they are, who they are, why they've experienced certain things, and why their life is the way they is today. Because recognizing, I think, those past links makes such a big difference. And so those two, like when they actually witness the behavior shifting and when they're not feeling as triggered or emotionally consumed by whatever past emotions or traumas have previously been in control of their life, and they're able to have more mindfulness for that.
What's been something that's really challenging for you being a coach?
What I didn't expect was how much your own stuff would get triggered. Not just in being a coach, but in like creating your own things or like having a business. I didn't realize how much it would test like all of my own like traumas or insecurities.
Yeah.
And also, I think what's been a challenge is I think that I'm always able to be present and be fully there for people in the sessions. But I think a challenge is like kind of what we were talking about earlier is like really showing up the way that you show up for like other people. Allowing, I think, for myself to create the space to feel my emotions in a way where I can then understand them to move through them. Literally in the same way that I share with other people to do it. And so I think those are the two biggest things, like how much it triggers like your own stuff that you actually have to it's like it's not something that you can kind of ignore your stuff with. Like you have to constantly be having self-awareness for yourself and like working through things when they come up in order to be able to continue to hold that space for other people.
Yeah. I feel the same way that with this podcast, it's like constantly having me look at my own stuff.
Yeah.
So that I can keep leveling up and like I can hold that vision and keep going towards it.
Yeah.
Because like ultimately I feel like the person that I am now is not going to be the person I am in a year. I like also go back and forth between holding the vision of what I want this to look like and also being able to surrender to what it fully wants to become. Because like I feel like there's power in surrender, but then there's also power in vision.
I totally can relate to that one too. Like you have like a vision for things and what you want things to become, but then things can transform or like you might have resistance towards the way things are going. I actually heard on a different podcast, this girl was saying that she always says, like when like talking to the universe or like trying to like bring things in, like bring me this or better.
Or better.
Yeah. Like this is what I desire, but I trust that you know what is best for me at the same time. So this is what I want. This is what I know is aligned with me, but I also know that you know what's best in terms of like bringing in what is all of the things I could experience. Because back to the limitation, we could be limiting ourselves with what we think we want to have, because there are so many things we haven't experienced or thought of, right? Like, I didn't know about being a coach. Like, if I wasn't exposed, if I didn't watch that documentary, I probably wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah. And I think there's another layer to that of wanting spirit, or whatever you might call it, spirit to create your life. But like then also like being able to have say in how you want it to be created. And this is something that I'm saying I'm still trying to like understand and navigate.
Me too.
Because I just don't, like I'm so extreme. I've either been like, you know what, like I give it up to whatever's guiding me, whatever invisible forces are guiding me, you can just do it all. I just want to feel good. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to feel happy. And then like I can like switch to the other extreme, like, you guys, this is not working.
Where's what I want?
I am not fulfilled. I need more money. I I don't know, like all the like the most common things. Like I need a boyfriend.
Right.
Like, there's just so many common things that we all think we want and need. But yep, I'm still figuring that out.
No, I'm in the same exact boat with you. Like, I've been listening every morning. I've been doing, I forgot his name. It's the 21 Days of Abundance meditation.
Aaron Dowdy.
No.
Oh. Do you know who that is?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, if I said his name, you would know who it is. But I just can't remember in this moment. Anyways, and they talk a lot about that. Like, talk a lot about, like, in terms of saying what it is you want, taking action towards what you want, but then also that balance of trusting that there's no limit to abundance. So that's another thing with limit. Like, there really is no limit to abundance. Like, when we think there's going to be, like, people say there's not going to be any oil or, like, this food, like, there's always more that eventually comes at some point, kind of thing. And that's kind of what they're saying. Like, there is always going to be more if you open yourself to it. Like, trusting that this, it's all going back to other things that we said, like, being content with where you are now brings in more of what it is that you actually desire. Like, especially when, you know, you might not look for something and then, oh, there it is. Or maybe you are looking for something and then that's how you know, come to see something. Like, so many different things.
Always back to limitation.
I know. How is that? It's weird. That's like the theme right now.
I'm sure like both of us in a year from now, we're going to be in like different places doing different things. But I feel like we'll both be on social media sharing our journeys.
Yeah.
And the thing about like what we go through, sometimes it's hard and it sucks. And like, I want to like be somewhere else. But then, like, I also remember that whatever I go through, I'm going to learn something. And then I'm going to be able to share it with other people. And that kind of makes it worthwhile.
I think I sometimes struggle to know what to share too. Like, I think that sometimes I share. And then I actually had a friend who said I needed to share more. She was like, I feel like you, like, I love your information and I love you. But there's also, like, you need to share more. Like, I've shared my story, but I don't think I've shared it that much.
You know, something that's interesting with social media, like, I think you have to share it over and over and over again.
That's true,
because people either forget or people might miss it. And if it's, like, not right there in front of them in that moment, they're just like, it's gone, you know? Right. And I think for us on this social media journey is to remember that the people right now, like, who we might look up to, like Jay Shetty, Jay Shetty, Aubrey Marcus, Aaron Dowdy, like all these people who have a big following, they've been doing this for years.
I know.
Like 6+ years. And if we just like keep doing this, we will build that following and like people will get to know us over time, but we have to keep telling them who we are so that it'll actually stick.
Right, and I forget about that. But then I think about like going back to Tony Robbins, like the amount of times I've heard him say his story, like probably in everything that he has shared. Like I always hear him talking about his story.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, do I really need to do it that many times? Like, but like I memorized, like I know his story now. Like I know Jay Shetty's story because of the amount of time that they've shared it.
Exactly. I actually took a YouTuber's course and this is one of the things that they like said. I learned so much in it, but like they said to have specific things in your videos that are the same. Like maybe you like have a cat and the cat comes into your video every time. Or like you have a story and you share the story. Or you have like a cup and you share, like the cup's always there because people like familiarity.
Yeah.
And there's also catchphrases. Like Aaron Dowdy says the same shit every time. Or Infinite Waters.
Yeah.
Do you know who that is?
No.
He says like breathing deep or like diving deep, breathing, something.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. Someone said they called it, based on their own thing, the baked potato principle. Oh,
interesting.
Because, so basically what they were saying is that it's Haley Hoffman Smith. I don't know if you've seen her, but she was saying one day, especially for like personal brands, like she was saying that one day she brought people through her entire day of like trying to get a baked potato. Like she was like, I love them because of this, and oh, I just ordered one on DoorDash from McDonald's and it just came, and oh my God, this is so good. And she's like, everyone needs in this like personal brand business needs to have a thing where people just like know you by, they associate you by, but something that's like you were saying, like something that's personal or like something that shows your personality, but like that shows who you are. I actually started doing on my Instagram stories, what's in my cup. And so every time that I go to like coffee shops, I always do like a what's in my cup where I take a picture of me like drinking it. And then like I just have like a poll thing of like what people, and surprisingly, people really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I'm like, wow, people really want to know what's in my cup. Granted, I feel like that. People can get a kind of an idea of what I have in my cup at this point. But it's always funny when there's some random, like, one that I put and, like, a majority of them do it. I'm like, guys, do you not know me? Like,
people probably look forward to it every day, too.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, I've gotten people who are saying, yeah, I love your what's in my cup.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. But, like, that's kind of that thing, like, having that consistent thing that, like, shows your personality and that kind of creates, like, what people, like, know you by.
If you could say one message to every person in this world, what would that message be?
It might be cliche, but I would say feel your emotions. And I would need to say that to myself, too, sometimes. But I think it's cliche, but it's also something we overlook a lot at the same time. Like, yeah, you're like, oh, yeah, I need to feel my emotions. But it's harder than it seems for a lot of people. And it's something that sometimes we have to learn how to do. And I think not just about feeling, but just in general, like allowing yourself to process them. Because processing is not just about feeling, it's about acknowledging it, feeling it, understanding it, and learning from it and releasing it. And when people actually turn towards what it is they're afraid to turn towards, there's so much there that can actually shift everything. Because their emotions are there for us to make a change, to show us what is out of alignment or in alignment. And from that, we can actually literally use our emotions to help guide us towards knowing what's best for us. But we get scared of getting stuck in them. And so I think having the bravery to be able to surrender when they arise and knowing that you will not get stuck if you continue to work through them.
I think that's the biggest thing, is to remember that they're not going to be there forever. That used to be my biggest fear.
Yeah.
And something I thought about every time, like, I have, like, a dip in my emotion. I'm like, oh, man, this is going to be forever. How am I going to live like this?
Yeah.
But no emotion is ever forever. Right. Ever forever. Never. Yeah.
Yeah. We get to choose.
Yeah.
We get to choose how long we're in it for, because we choose when we decide to begin to process it and how that looks. And for me, that's the biggest thing that I've had to learn, is that I can choose. Like, I don't have to remain stuck in an emotion. Like, you can actually work through it and not stay in it for a week, for months. Like, it's possible to move through it when you feel it, if you turn towards it right when it comes up.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the big struggle for me, is I have had a hard time acknowledging that an emotion is there and just like kind of like let it linger until it's like too much and I have to look at it, instead of like, okay, this emotion is coming up, let's work through it right now. Like, taking that time no matter what's going on. Yeah. And in the long run, it does save time.
And how can people find you?
So Instagram is the best way to find me, at Skylar Sustin, and then my website's also skylarsustin.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.